Welcome to Happier ADHD. My name's Marley Darling. I'm a second generation neurodiversity expert with over 17 years experience, and now I'm raising my own neurodiverse kids. You'll notice that I call the podcast a few different things, but we always explore these same topics that I've been looking at for the last 17 years. Psychology, mindset, neurodiversity, personal development, health and well-being, business, parenting, and more. So, without further ado, let's jump in. Hello and welcome to another episode of ADHD Energy Empress, where we talk about ADHD in an empowering way and find the hacks, strategies and mindset that have the most impact for the least amount of effort and that really work into your daily life. My name's Marley Darling. I've been doing this work for 17 years. I have ADHD myself. I'm on the autism spectrum and I'm a single parent homeschooling and raising 24/7 my two high energy ADHD on the spectrum kiddos. On my mind this week is going away to a camp next week with 350 homeschoolers. This is also my struggle for the week, is that this has been taking a really big mental load. And I knew as a single parent that a lot of the physical stuff is down to me, but doing this has really shown me that the mental load is a huge aspect as well, because I have to make sure all three of us are prepared for this camp, that we have everything that we need, that we're ready to leave on time, first thing, early on Monday morning. And if not everything's ready, if I make even a little mistake and I forget the wrong thing, it could have a big impact, and then it's me who has to deal with the consequences of that. So that's been taking up a lot of my thoughts this week, and a lot of the things I'm going to cover in this episode are related to that. But first, on a more positive note, the achievement for this week and the breakthrough is related to manners, and I have two little things here. The first one was on Sunday when I asked my oldest daughter to water the plants while I finished drying the dishes, and then I'd be able to unlock the tablet for her to read, and she did it. She just did it, no complaints, no back chatting, and usually every little task, every little demand is a huge thing, and it's I tell you, it's so relieving when you can just ask something of somebody and they just do it. That's really nice when you've had a decade worth of struggling over little things. It's really nice when they just say yes. So this was an amazing moment. It was a huge breakthrough, and I really thanked her and said that it was so nice for me to have that help and for her to just do it with no complaints, no back chat. And what she said to me was, well, not out loud. And I said, well, that's still a huge help, and that's a good start, is to not say those things out loud like that. And it's so nice when we can just get along. And it made me reflect as well about how I asked and what the conditions were that let her just do that. And it was really taking that approach of more treating her with that respect that I would give a friend, rather than placing it as a demand. And she had something to ask of me as well. So there was going to be that immediate reward of unlocking the tablet. And maybe also because it was such a reasonable request. I've noticed with those conditions sometimes that I get that more cooperation. If there's something that she wants that I just physically cannot do because I'm busy, she's really starting to realize, okay, well, if I want the thing, then I'm going to have to do it myself, or I'm going to have to help out so that it can happen quicker. And from my side of things, just really stating that expectation as well. Like sometimes she'll just bring her drink bottle over and say, Mum, can you fill this up? And I'll say, well, look, my hands are wet. I'm doing the dishes, so maybe you can do it yourself. Or you can wait a minute, and giving that either or choice. So that was a really beautiful moment. And the other one I have along the similar line was something that I overheard. And as a parent, you feel like you repeat things 1,000 times and your kids just don't seem to get it. But when you overhear them repeating those exact same phrases and lessons to somebody else is like an absolutely golden moment. So what I overheard was, I'm not sure what the youngest daughter said to my oldest daughter. I didn't hear that bit, but what I heard was the response from my oldest daughter, which was, "Oh, thanks for asking nicely. When you ask nicely, it makes people really want to help you." And I'm paraphrasing there. I can't remember the exact words, but that's something I've said before, is that, it's so nice when you ask nicely like that. It makes people really more inclined to want to help, and they feel good about helping. So that was really beautiful to hear that, and the tone that she used, and it was really nice. And again, gave me a reminder about my own behavior, and it's important for me to focus on saying the positive things, repeating the positive things, because the more someone's exposed to something, the more that neuron strengthens in their brain, the more it becomes a memory that's concreted in there, rather than trying to use the more negative tactic of telling people off for their bad behavior or giving them a huge lecture. If you say something in a succinct way and just repeat that, it may at the time feel like it's not getting through or like you're not doing enough, but I think having that more succinct kind of catchphrase is actually going to have a much bigger impact long term, and maybe just a bigger impact overall, because kids don't really respond to that other stuff. I think it just takes that time. It's like training a puppy, because kids' brains aren't really fully developed yet, so they need that repeated exposure, that repeated reminders, rather than being told, hey, you need to self-reflect upon this, or here's a lecture about the logical reasons why you should behave in a certain way. That's not quite how kids work, or indeed how a lot of humans work. So those were the little achievements and breakthroughs for this week, and they were really positive. Now for the hack. This week I've been hearing a lot of Pokemon game music played repeatedly on YouTube, and it's really fast, like kind of annoying, some of it, but clearly it's a current hyperfixation. It's obviously bringing some dopamine. So my hack for this week is to leverage dopamine and utilize hyperfixations. And this goes for anyone parenting kids, or it goes for adults as well. If there is something that is bringing dopamine, or something that's a current hyperfocus, you can use it to get other tasks done. With ADHD, it's harder to do tasks that don't bring dopamine, so pairing with other things that do bring dopamine is a really, really, really excellent strategy. So, for example, with my daughter being hyper-focused on this music, listening to it is making her more likely to do her schoolwork. I cannot think when some of this music is on, but she insists that it's helping her think. So she puts on headphones. That's our little workaround and our compromise for me not being able to deal with it, and just us having those opposite sensory needs. She's more likely to do her teeth when she's listening to it. And I've been fighting it a bit. I don't love how obsessive she's being about it, but I was just reflecting this morning and thinking, well, if she's going to be obsessive about it, maybe I should use that to my advantage, and it could be used as a reward, as a motivator, as a negotiator. And same as adults, if there's something that's bringing you dopamine, do it at the same time as something else you want to get done, or do it as a reward for afterwards. So could be having your hyper focus while you cook a more nutritious meal that takes a bit of effort and is a bit of a mental load, or it could be while you exercise, or it could be a reward for afterwards. Whatever it is, there are definitely ways that you can leverage it and be creative, and I'd love to hear the things that you come up with. So that's my hack for this week. Now, a question. The question is not really a worded question, but it's about planners and finding the right planner for ADHD. There are so many planners out there. It can be overwhelming. The thing that often happens is you'll get a planner and it might just not suit you, the layout or the various sections, and you might skip different bits. So what I've personally done over the years is kind of paid attention to the parts that I do use and the parts that are useful. I don't think it's helpful to feel like you need to fill in every single part. There can be a bit of, it's almost like a demand is the expectation to fill in these parts, and having various questions on the page can feel like a demand and can spark some PDA or resistance. But it's just not practical as well. So it can be good to pay attention to what parts suit you and find a planner that only has those parts, or a planner that's really simplified. Or what I personally love is the bullet journal because it's customizable, but I recommend keeping it simple. I used a bullet journal for the last couple of years and just had it like a calendar, but also with a to-do list. And then I would just transfer 1 or 2 things that I would need to do each day, and then I could just keep moving them on if I put them off. But I was drawing that in every week and it was getting really scrappy. So this year what I'm trying is something that's basically similar to that. Is it just has every day and a list for each day, and up the top there's just a small section for habits as well. So very, very simple. And that's what I recommend for ADHD, is the more simple, the better, and only have the parts that are really useful to you, because some journals can be really elaborate. Some can have like the time listed for each day from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and what you're going to do at each hour, which it can be useful to put things in that are appointments and stuff like that, but that's hyper scheduled, and ADHD does not work like that. So I prefer to just have a blank square. I'll put the time for the thing that I have on, and then I'll have a to-do list separate or in a different color from that. And if your life is more scheduled, maybe those times would be useful. But again, pay attention to what helps you, and anything that creates a bit of a mental block, pay attention to that as well, because if it's not helping, get rid of it from your life. You don't need it. Every little stress builds up, and whatever you can eliminate from your life will create a more stress-free life. So that's my opinion on planners and my recommendation. I use the Lectern planners for a bullet journal. I absolutely love them. I use them for my one-line journal, reflection journal as well. And the different journal I'm trialing this year is called Curation, I think. And they have a section for budgeting at the front and a list of things you want to do throughout the year, and it's kind of just had the sections that I use anyway, so that's why I liked that one. But moving on, a little bit of life reflection. This is related to having the camp come up next week. So for health and mood, they're kind of going together this week. Because camp is taking up such of my mental space, my emotional regulation, my executive function is lowered this week, and I'm not able to keep up with everything at the same energy that I usually can. So I'm being flexible, I'm having self-compassion, I'm taking it easy, and I'm being lax in the things that I can be a bit more lax in, but for the core things, I'm keeping them going. And I really love the mindset about devotion rather than discipline. So devotion is like being devoted to your health, being devoted to your body, being devoted to maybe keeping your house livable and having a nice environment. And it's more the feeling and the intention behind it rather than discipline, which is particular acts in themselves. So when I'm devoted to my health, I'm eating healthily and whatever that looks like for that day. If I'm disciplined about what I'm eating, then I'm very particular and there's a lot of rules. Same with exercise. If I'm devoted to my body, I'm making sure I move my body, I do my exercises. But if I'm disciplined, it's about what I'm doing. Am I doing this exact exercise, all these exercises on every day that I intend to do them? Discipline obviously takes more willpower, more executive function. It's just a whole different energy and mindset. Whereas having that devotion is really helping me this week, because then I can be more flexible. I skipped one of my workouts this week and just did exercises instead. And I probably did it for the same amount of time that I would have done a workout routine, but it just was less mental load, less executive functioning than following a routine on the Sweat app, because I just took it in my own time, just relaxed, just listened to some music or a podcast and just changed things up a little bit to lessen that load on my brain and to try and increase the dopamine a bit as well. And the other things that I'm doing to help with this low emotional regulation, and it's almost like a vulnerability as well, because I have this big thing coming up that's my responsibility, and it feels like a lot. It feels really adult. So I'm trying to have that self-compassion and really look after myself and my mood as well. I put on some familiar TV. I put on an episode of Friends for that comfort and that familiarity and helping with that emotional regulation. I started a new fiction book as well, because I need that comfort. I need something that I can take with me to the camp that's familiar, that's consistent. I find that if I have a book on the go and a TV show on the go, it really, really helps me with regulation, because it puts me in a certain mood. It's like an environment. It's a mental environment, because you go into their world, into their, you're with the same personalities. There's a certain vibe, there's a certain environment in the book, in the TV show, and I find that really helps with regulation. So I've started a new book. I was not mentally in the space for it. It didn't get me hooked in the first chapter, but the second chapter is getting there, and I knew that I had to push through a bit because the payoff would be good. I really need to get into the next fiction book and remember that having a book on the go feels really great to me, and that I don't need to savor books as well. Sometimes I get the feeling that I'm going to run out and it's going to be hard to find another one, but I do have a couple of books on my list to read next as well. So I'm just going to go for it and remember that there are always more books coming out. And same with a TV show, which I'll talk about at the end, where I talk about different media that I've been consuming, but I need to find my next comfort show as well, but I'll talk about that soon. In my social life this week, it's been interesting to notice how the low emotional regulation and a bit of baseline anxiety has changed the feeling about these social outings. So usually they bring me quite a bit of dopamine, and I'm really excited about them and I love going to them. And this week that excitement and that dopamine was less, which was interesting, but it was good for my regulation and just, it's still fun to be with other people and have a good social time. So I still had fun, but I was definitely in a different mood and a different headspace while I was there. And I'm really glad as well that I could still do those things without this huge level of excitement. And one of the days we went to do tennis, which we do on occasion, and it wasn't this huge, big, exciting thing. It was just like, yeah, I'd like to do that. I want to get out and do that thing, which is interesting because I do rely a lot on that excitement, that kind of bigger, more stressful energy to get me doing things. So I'm really glad that I could just make a choice and say, look, I think this is going to be good for me and it will be a bit of fun, rather than this, it's going to be a huge fun thing. So that was cool. And obviously I did feel good doing that as well, even though it was really hot and we only did the tennis for half an hour. In parenting this week, the main thing has been increased tech use because of the low emotional regulation, and just taking it a little bit easy this week just to make sure I'm looking after myself and prepared for next week and have that mental space to plan as I need to plan. Also, we've been doing a bit more driving this week, so it's just happened that there's been more tech. And it started out with edutech. It's kind of shifted into playing Pokemon a bit more often. But it's been an experiment as well to see how that affects my kids. And they can be a bit grumpier. But I'm trying to take this approach of getting them to self-reflect and them to learn and think about how they are feeling about things like that, and then make good choices, because that's actually empowering them for the future and giving them skills to have a more intrinsic versus extrinsic experience. And that kind of means internal versus external, and it comes from psychology and speaking in terms of rewards, but I'm using it in terms of enforcing things as well. It's not just rewards, it's rewards and motivation. So having that intrinsic understanding for themselves and that intrinsic decision making and motivation, and making good choices, rather than just feeling like it's this external thing all the time. It's me imposing or me controlling what they're doing. So we're trying to experiment a little bit with that. And this morning, my daughter came in and she said, "Oh, guess how much time I had on my tech yesterday?" I added it all up, and guys, it was too much. There was quite a bit of driving yesterday, and morning relaxing and evening relaxing. So I'm a little bit embarrassed to say just how much it was. It's definitely a lot more than I would usually let them. But again, just relaxing that a little bit, because it's not the end of the world, and I didn't necessarily have the energy to be super disciplined or have a big argument with them about it. And maybe they didn't have the mental space either to I don't know, it's been interesting, because one thing that does concern me is that the more tech they have, the less they're interested in doing other things. But I don't think that's a huge lasting problem. So they've been using it to regulate themselves the last few days and using it as entertainment as well. But I did take them to the library the other day, and I will do that again today. And just after we go to the library, when they've got books to read, they're happy, and they'll read for hours as well. So I feel like text kind of replaced their reading in that way for this week, and we'll definitely refine the balance, especially with this camp coming up, because they just won't want to use text so much. We'll be too busy to do it, and although I think we'll take it to help us with their drive there, I don't think we'll be playing it much while we're there. Maybe at the end of the day, just to regulate a little bit. But anyway, it's been an experiment. And the other thing I was going to say about my daughter this morning is that I asked her, "How did you feel?" And she said, "Well, I felt a bit tired after doing all that tech." And I said, "Was it a fulfilling day for you? Were you happy with how you spent your day?" And she said, "Yeah." So she obviously was appreciating the things that she was achieving in that digital world. But I said, "Well, if you did it every day, you might feel tired, like you said." So just encouraging that little bit of reflection for her. So it's interesting, and I will report back on how that goes. In the house this week, again, less effort, being a little bit lax where I can, doing the things that take that low effort, that high impact, and following through with the core duties. Like I vacuumed once because it was getting grubby, and I did the washing to keep on top of it, and I keep on top of the dishes as well, because that can be just so overwhelming. But also choosing my timing of when I hang the washing, because sometimes I find that I think I have enough time, and I've heard it being called being an ADHD time wizard. I think it was the ADHD couple, I think they call themselves ADHD Love maybe, but they wrote the book Dirty Laundry. They call it being an ADHD time wizard, and thinking that you have more time than you do. And sometimes that can get me really stuck and mean that I'm rushing out the door because I have to hang the washing first. So I've tried to be a little bit more mindful about that this week, and give myself more time to do it. Maybe when I'm already having a home day, so it can be flexible and I don't need to hang it out right the second that the thing goes off, and I don't need to rush hanging it up. So that's house this week. I don't have much to say about it because I've just been taking it easy. In business and productivity, same thing. I've been recording this today because it's 1 week today and I'm being committed to it, but I'm letting the stress go and the expectation go. This week is not the week for me to make big plans. It's the week for me to, I don't know, just choose what's going into my mental space, basically. The thing about stress, here's a little hack for you, is that to decrease your stress levels, what you need, like if you're stressed, it's because you have things to do, things to manage. And the trick is to either decrease the things that you need to do or increase the time to do it. So this week, that's what I've chosen to do, is I'm not giving myself too many to-dos, and I am increasing the time to do it. The only things that have a deadline really are getting ready for the camp. That's my entire focus this week. Media that I've been consuming this week, I've been really lax on reading Life Keeps Me Dancing, my non-fiction book that I'm reading at the moment. I've just not been in the mental space for it. I started a book called Iris Kelly Doesn't Date by Ashley Herring Blake. I've read the other two in the series, and the last non-fiction book I read was the first book in that series because I'd already read the second. I've finished watching Friends from College. I did quite like it in the end. Got past some of the more serious topics and was a bit more silly. It was a very interesting show, the mix of drama and kind of more negative things, but with the friendly, funny, silly friends as well. Interesting. I found it had a really interesting vibe. So like I said, I need to find my next comfort show. I watch Friends sometimes. I like to watch an episode here or there, but I've watched it a couple of times, so I'm not super into it. I like having something new. That's the need for dopamine. I love novelty, but I'm also really picky with shows because I like them to be fun and silly and positive, but mentally engaging enough. I don't like them to be like negative and drama, but I like there to be some interest. And if there's a quirky hook that I can kind of learn about something new at the same time or see things through a different perspective, then I find them quite interesting. Like What We Do in the Shadows, for example. It's a vampire sitcom, so some of the jokes come through that funny situation of them being vampires in the modern day, and I think I find that kind of whimsical, I guess, when you combine certain things. Like there's a show called Plebs, which is a sitcom set in Roman times, and I haven't watched all of those because I found the show a little bit slow, but same thing, just the funny jokes that mix modern humor with different context, and in that case, like the Roman times, I find that whimsical. I find that very interesting and cool. I've been listening to podcasts. Sorry, I need to pronounce words properly. For my brain food and, again, emotional regulation, just giving my brain something to focus on, give myself a break from thinking about other things. And with Duolingo, I switched to Italian. I'm a quarter Italian, and I've been having so much fun pronouncing the Italian words with gusto and gesticulation. Gesticulation is when you move your hands a lot. That's a lot of fun. That's been bringing me some dopamine, so I'm really enjoying that. Now for letting go of. Last week I said I wanted to let go of the stress of trying to leave the house on time. I had some success with that this week. Again, what I said before, when you're stressed, you need to decrease the things you need to do or increase the time to do it. So I've tried to be a bit lax with when we leave. If we're late, we're late. It's not the end of the world. Sometimes I'll tell myself that, but I'll be saying like, oh, if we're late, we're late. It's not the end of the world, but I only want to be this amount of late, and I keep that stress energy. And that's not cool, and it's not needed. I can focus on the outcome of getting ready in time without having the stress about it, and I can move faster and do the things I need to do without having the stress about it. Or I could even have a bit of physical stress because cortisol can help you function quicker, but without having the mental stress of it. So I've done well in some spots, but I did have some stress about going out. And I think it's hard when it's not just me, it's children. I'm trying to herd the cats, as they say. That can feel quite frustrating. I feel frustrated when I need to get someone else to do something that they're not cooperating with. That's like my biggest frustration trigger. So it makes for very interesting parenting, especially with the kids that I have. So that's a really big life lesson for me, and I'm working on it. And we're going out today, but I'm not stressing about it too much. It'll happen. Gonna keep working on that. I'll see how I go on Monday when we need to leave early in the morning, and we're supposed to be at the camp at a certain time. That will be interesting. I'll see if I can do that without stress. Wish me luck. But this week, what I'm letting go of is strict expectations on lots and lots of little things. I have anxiety, I would call it, the fear of the impact of little things. So, for example, I might overthink the impact that exposure to a certain song might have on my child. And that's partly because I know about neuroscience and psychology and development, but there's a bit of a balance there. And there has to be a balance, because otherwise it's micromanaging absolutely everything. And it's not like I'm listening to songs with huge negative impact, but there was a song that's called Baby I'm Jealous, and she talks about being jealous of other women in relation to her boyfriend. And that kind of messaging will go into my kids' brains if they hear it repeatedly. I know that because that's how it works. That's the science. That's what science can tell us about the brain. And reflecting back on my own life, there are beliefs that are ingrained in me because of exposure to certain things. And they might not be my conscious beliefs, and I might as well have a contradictory belief to it, but they are in there somewhere. But there has to be a balance. There has to be. Otherwise, like I said, it's just micromanaging every little thing. It's not like I'm listening to music about music about guns or hugely negative things or treating other people terribly. And it's just the same with all the choices I make as a parent. I'm a big overthinker and I want to make the right choices. But what I'm realizing is that I need to make the choices and then be happy with those choices and then let it go. It's a really similar thing to a conversation I had this week about trust and risk assessment. If there is a risk that I can minimize, I take action and minimize it. If there is a risk or harm happening to my child, then I can take action and fix it. But having the anxiety that a risk might happen is not useful. I'm going to say that again because it's a little bit confusing. If there's a risk, act on the risk. But having fear of the risk is not useful. It's one thing to be prepared. It's one thing to act in the moment. But worrying that a risk could happen is like taking a whole unnecessary step back. And I can be quite an anxious person. I do worry about things happening. But especially with some things I've been through in life, I did learn that I can deal with things when they happen, and that having the anxiety, worrying about them happening is just a waste of time and takes away from life and enjoyment and living and loving. Because if I had spent the last few years not being anxious and just dealing with problems as they arise, I would have felt better. I could have taken away all that anxiety and lifted that off me and saved so much time and energy and freed up that mental, emotional space to be lighter and enjoy things more. And it's easier said than done. And I did take a really positive and strong mindset towards things, but I just want to take it that next step where Especially with parenting and loved ones, enjoying my kids and not worrying, how will this impact them? Will they disengage from me as teenagers? How will they feel about me as an adult? Will this song impact their relationship choices in future? It's hard being someone who thinks a lot. It's a gift to be able to analyze and think like that, but there is a balance. So that's basically what I'm letting go of, and finding what that balance is, and maybe putting aside some time if I am questioning, is this the right choice? Think about it. Think about those possible outcomes, but don't dwell on it. Trust in my choices. And that's what I was told this week, is to have more trust, especially being a spiritual person who's been able to trust in the universe and trust that things will go my way, and trust that I am protected and guided and looked after, and trust that any challenges that come my way are things that I can handle. There's a saying that the challenges that you're dealt in life are equal to the strength that you hold, that you can meet any challenges that you're given. And I've found that to be absolutely true. So it's about really taking that trust and learning to implement it to these other things in my life as well, and have that faith and trust that I'm doing the right thing, and that we're all going to be okay, and that we can just relax a little bit, let it go a bit, and be happy. And so on the last note, gratitude, what I'm grateful for this week is the space to have self-compassion this week, the space to be more lax with some responsibilities, the space to really navigate the lower executive functioning and emotional regulation. And as I get more prepared for this camp, and as I have my clothes packed and the things that I need gathering by the door, and I've got, I hope, enough food and water for us to take, I'm starting to feel excited about it. And that's what I was told this week as well, is that remember that it's meant to be a fun thing. I have chosen to go to this camp, and I've chosen to go because I've decided that it will be a fun experience. So instead of just having that mental load about, I have to get ready, I can also have that mindset of I'm preparing for this really fun experience, and bring this different energy to it. So that's my week this week. Interesting episode, interesting mood this week, and I will come back to you next week and let you know how it went. And thank you again for listening. I'll see you next week. Bye. So you've got neurodiverse kids in your life. You've probably noticed that they don't respond well to traditional parenting techniques or discipline or ways to get them motivated or to comply. Maybe you're tearing your hair out with stress and the same old struggles and fights and arguments every single day. Or perhaps you're feeling completely lost because you've tried absolutely everything and it just doesn't seem to work. These kids do not respond to behavior charts. They don't respond to power being asserted over them. What these kids need is something completely different. And what I'm going to suggest to you is you actually stop trying to change them. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. And you cannot change these children. You cannot control their behavior. But if you change something around them, you change their environment, you change how you act, it will change how they react. It will change how they respond. If you change something, then no longer will you be stuck in this cycle of doing what you've always done and getting what you've always got. And those traditional methods do not work. So stop wasting your time and energy on them. I know you're looking for a solution and you feel like it's just not possible anymore, but let me tell you, I was in the exact same boat, and then I realized what we need is to do something radically different. My approach is to change the environment around them and to change how you interact with them, and that will have the biggest impact. It'll stop you feeling like your head is butting up against a wall, and it will start actually creating change with less effort. I believe in small, easy to implement shifts that create big change. So if you're interested in seeing what I have to offer, head over to marleydarling.com and I've got a free webinar there for you to check out, and then comprehensive programs that cover everything I've learned in over a decade of parenting neurodiverse kids, and also in being a neurodiverse person myself who's been studying neurodiversity for over 17 years. I'm here to help you. I'm here to give a different approach, and I wholeheartedly believe that we need a radically different approach to support these children, to empower them to live the best lives possible, and to give you a bit of a break as the parent. So head on over to marleydarling.com where you can find some free resources and maybe check out my comprehensive programs if you're ready to see a massive difference in your life through just some small shifts. See you there.